These, my friends, are eggs. A little while ago, I looked at just about every way you could cook a chicken egg, but that just made me curious about all the other types of eggs out there. How different is a chicken egg from an ostrich egg? How different is a bird egg from a fish egg? And most importantly, how do they all taste? Today, we're going to look at 12 different types of eggs from 12 different animals and use them in 12 distinctly different dishes. Through this, we'll discover what makes each of these eggs unique. I'm Emil Stonik, editor-at-large at Bon Appetit, and this is 12 Types of Eggs. Let's start with some basics. An egg is a vessel meant to nourish and protect an animal's offspring until it's better capable of surviving on its own. If the egg isn't fertilized, there's no offspring that needs to use all of the vitamins, minerals, fats, and protein packed inside that protective shell, and another animal, in this case us, can take advantage of them. The egg that we're most familiar with is the chicken egg. Before being domesticated, the wild precursor to the modern chicken might lay around 10 to 15 eggs a year. But through selective breeding and the use of artificial lighting and temperature management, that number has soared to 250 to 300 a year. Chicken eggs come in all different sizes, but an average large egg weighs around 55 to 60 grams. They also come in a whole rainbow of colors. Some people have an idea that brown eggs or green eggs are somehow inherently healthier than white eggs, but in reality, the color of the egg doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the egg. The color is determined by the breed of chicken. Leghorns lay white eggs, Rhode Island Reds lay brown eggs, and descendants of the Araucana breed lay blue or green eggs. Let's take a look inside, shall we? The inside of a chicken egg is pretty much equal parts yolk and white. You'll notice that the white, also called the albumin, is comprised of both a firm part and a runny part, which is totally normal. The albumin tends to get runnier as an egg ages. You'll also notice that the color of the yolk can differ between eggs, and this has everything to do with the chicken's diet. A darker yolk doesn't mean the chicken it came from was healthier per se, it simply means that its diet was made up of foods with high levels of yellow pigment. Hens that eat more corn or alfalfa will produce eggs with darker yolks than those of hens fed more wheat or barley. All right, let's take a look at these once they've been cooked. Here we have a fried chicken egg. You can see that yolk in the middle surrounded by the firm white and the runny white which spread out as the egg hit the pan. The yolk is still plenty runny, barely cooked, while the white has crisped up nicely around the edges. When we cut into it, the yolk just oozes out like that. It's beautiful. I'm gonna get a bite that's got a little yolk and a little white in it. The rich yolk just kind of coats your mouth, and the white is mild and clean and bouncy. Who doesn't love a fried egg? And while that's certainly the simplest way to cook an egg, there's probably no more iconic and beloved expression of it than the French omelet. So, what distinguishes a French omelet from any other kind of omelet is that it's perfectly pale and rolled rather than being folded. When you cut into it, you can see that the inside is actually still runny and soft. The French call it bavousse, which means something like slobber. Nice, right? That is so delicious. The richness of the egg yolk and the lightness of the white are fully integrated and cooked ever so gently so they're super tender. There's also a good amount of butter in there, which really backs up the grassy creaminess of the eggs. This would go great with a cup of coffee, or maybe a glass of red wine. Yum. The next egg we're looking at is the ostrich egg. The ostrich is the world's largest bird, so it should come as no surprise that it lays the world's largest egg. The ostrich egg is the equivalent of 24 chicken eggs and weighs just over 3 pounds. Weirdly though, ostrich eggs are the smallest egg in relation to the size of the bird they come from. When you shake it up, you kind of feel something rattling around in there. The shell is smooth and hard and really thick, up to 3 millimeters. So I'm not sure if banging it on the counter is even gonna break it. Yeah, no. I'm gonna need to break out the big guns. I'm gonna use this hammer to just kind of chip away in a circle and then peel back a little piece of the shell at a time. Ooh, it's starting to ooze. Gnarly. Okay, let's dump it out. Oh dear Lord, it is truly shocking just how much fluid there is in here. I made a big bird-sized mess. Yuck. Okay, well, there's a whole lot of egg going on here. A lot of runny white, and the yolk is weirdly firm, almost like it's already been cooked. And the firm white is very thick and bouncy. I'm gonna have to use a knife to break this yolk. Wow, it smells very odd. Oh God, The yolk, it's really, really thick, like the yolk of a ramen egg almost. This is a lot to take in. I can't look at this anymore. Okay, so here we have our fried ostrich egg. Look at the size of this thing. It's really crazy. You can see how much of the lighter, runnier yolk spread out thin and brown significantly. It almost has a dosa-like texture. And the rest of the cooked white has an almost bluish green-gray tint to it and it feels really firm. I feel like I need a dagger and a pitchfork to get into this. Ooh, yeah, very tough. The yolk is runny, but crazy thick, and it smells kind of musky. You know, it doesn't taste nearly as crazy as I thought it was going to. Definitely more buttery than a standard chicken egg, with a sort of brawny, kind of funky aftertaste. The texture is disconcertingly meaty. Not nearly as weird as I thought it was going to be. For the dish, I thought, what better to go along with this giant bird than a giant deviled egg? This is pretty horrifying. The texture is really weird. The white is really rubbery, very firm. It doesn't have that tender quality you expect in a deviled egg yolk. Never mind. I'm just gonna use my hands. Oof. Well, combining that yolk with mayonnaise really takes it over the top. It's so fatty, it's kind of nauseating. And the hard-boiled white texture is almost plasticky, kind of like too firm Jell-O. Don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful deviled egg, but I don't think I really want to eat this ever again. Next up, we've got a quail egg. The quail egg is the smallest commercially available egg, weighing in at just 9 grams a pop. They're about 1/6 the size of a chicken egg, and these shells are really beautiful. They have these dark brown speckles laid over a light brown shell. Really pretty. Let's crack it open. You know, that membrane underneath the shell is actually pretty tough, so it's a little bit hard to kind of pull it apart cleanly. Look at this teeny tiny egg. It seems like we may have busted the yolk a little bit. Oops. The ratio of yolk to white seems to be tilted in favor of the yolk. There's not a whole lot of the firm white that we're used to with a chicken egg. It all seems quite runny. Really excited to see this one cooked. So here we have our fried quail egg. Obviously, this is a lot smaller than our chicken egg. We can see the white kind of spread out quite a bit because it was so loose. You know, cutting into this seems kind of silly. May as well eat the whole thing. Definitely a bit richer than our chicken egg, which probably has to do with the yolk to white ratio. It has a slightly gamey, kind of wild bird quality to it, but on the whole, it's pretty mild, and I think that most people would probably have a hard time distinguishing this from a standard chicken egg. For our dish, we decided on kwek kwek, a popular street food from the Philippines. Hard-boiled quail eggs that have been skewered, battered, and deep fried. Yum. This coating is really something else. It's orange because it contains magic sarap, a common Filipino spice blend. We're just gonna take one of these off the skewer, go ahead and dip it into our tangy sauce. It's really tasty. The batter's a little bit chewy, which is cool contrast with a slightly bouncy hard-boiled quail egg. The yolk is a little bit chalky, and that's because it's challenging to boil such a small egg without overcooking it. But honestly, I'm not tasting a ton of egg here because the flavor of the batter in the sauce is pretty strong. It seems like the quail eggs are more of a novelty here than anything else. It's fun to snack on a bunch of tiny eggs. Makes me feel like a giant. Okay, next we're gonna look at the rhea egg. The rhea is a bird that looks similar to an ostrich, only it's a little bit smaller and is native to South America rather than Africa. This thing is beautiful. I love this buttery yellow speckly color, and the shape of the egg is pretty distinctive too. It's remarkably pointy on this end. This is the equivalent of about 10 chicken eggs. So that makes it about half the size of an ostrich egg. The shell is definitely quite hard and, yep, looks like I'm gonna have to get the hammer out again. Yeah, this definitely feels kind of like a mini ostrich egg. Ooh, got a gusher. Wow, there it is. Whole lot of egg. The yolk feels really firm, like really, really firm. I can pick it up and it's not gonna break. It almost feels like a yolky water balloon. There's quite a bit of watery business, but still has a nice, thick albumin. The more I touch this yolk, I can tell that the liquid inside isn't that thick the way that the ostrich yolk was, but it's just that the membrane surrounding it is really firm. When I pierce it, the liquid just kind of runs out and has the thickness of an over-medium chicken egg yolk. Wild. Well, now that I made a big mess, let's fry one up. This fried rhea egg kind of looks like you put a chicken egg in some kind of enlarger machine. How perfect does that look? The albumin stayed nice and tight, but it does have a slightly gray-blue sort of sheen to it. and it's sort of wrinkly looking. Let's get ourselves a slice. Wow. That's really something. It has a fairly strong flavor. There's kind of a toastiness going on, kind of like a cooked grain or popcorn. It's really interesting and distinctive, but kind of a lot to handle. I don't think I could eat a whole one of these. For our dish, we prepared a classic Spanish tortilla. This is a tapas staple, a beautiful potato onion frittata that's often served cold or room temperature. You can see from the side that there are pieces of tender confit potato and onion in there that are kind of suspended in the cooked egg situation. Usually you would make this with a whole bunch of chicken eggs, but one single rhea egg was enough to fill up our pan, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna cut ourselves a little bite here. I love that. You know, I think that the rhea egg was a really good choice for this. That grain-like flavor I was describing plays really nice with the earthy potato and onion flavors. Delicious. Somebody get me a glass of sherry. Next on the docket is our duck egg. On average, duck eggs are around 30% bigger than a chicken egg. Their shells are slightly thicker than chicken eggs, but this one looks almost translucent, which makes this a good time to talk about candling. Candling is when you shine a light through the shell of an egg to determine if it's been fertilized or not. This egg clearly hasn't been fertilized, but if it had been, you could see the outline of the chick inside and check out the embryo's development. Even though it hasn't been fertilized, you can still see some anatomical features of the egg. You can clearly see the air cell, which would provide the chick with air until it's ready to breathe on its own, as well as the yolk floating in the albumin. Okay, so now that we've determined that there's no baby duck in this egg, it's safe to crack it open. The membrane is a little bit more tenacious than that of a chicken egg, and right off the bat, you can tell the yolk is much larger than the white, which isn't really white at all. It's almost completely clear. The yolk is quite firm, but nowhere near as firm as the rhea egg was. Okay, anybody order a fried duck egg? What a beaut. What's really remarkable to me is how white the white is. It was practically clear when raw, but now that it's cooked, it's brilliantly white. That's really fascinating. All right, let's get a bite going. That's delicious. Honestly, it tastes extremely similar to a chicken egg, but much richer and creamier. I think I'd have a hard time eating 2 of these for breakfast, but they'd make a great addition to an egg dish that you wanted to give a little extra richness to. Okay, let's get to our cooked duck egg dish. Egg drop soup. So, if you've never had egg drop soup before, it's a very simple Chinese soup made by streaming beaten egg into a broth so that the egg cooks and forms into cute little ribbons. I personally love eating it for breakfast because it's kind of like scrambled eggs and soup all in one. It's so good with the duck eggs. Because they're a little bit richer, they add some extra depth and heft to an otherwise light dish. I'm into it. So now that we've looked at duck, goose. The average goose egg is more than twice the size of the average chicken egg. It weighs around 140 grams and the shell is much stronger. It has this gorgeous matte finish and it's slightly longer and more pointed, kind of like a cross between our duck egg and the rhea egg. As you can see, the white is thin and nearly completely clear, almost like our duck egg. That yolk is very dense feeling. I cannot wait to see this one cooked. Okay, so here we have a big, bright, beautiful yolk. And the thin white kind of ran all over the place. I'm gonna cut into it. Wow, yeah, that yolk is very, very viscous. You can see that it has a thicker texture than you'd get from a regular fried chicken egg yolk. Yum, it's really fatty. And the white almost has a kind of nutty sort of flavor with an almost mushroom-like savoriness. That's really special. I don't think I was expecting it to taste quite so unique. I'm really excited to try this one in. Oh, okay. Guys, I told you, cash or check only. All right. Eggs in purgatory. So this is a simple, rustic Italian dish of eggs poached in a spicy tomato sauce. You crack the eggs right into the bubbling sauce so that the whites firm up, but the yolk stays nice and runny. I'm gonna dig in here. You know, this dish really is extra special with the goose egg. They're so rich and flavorful, and that contrasts really nicely with the aggressive acidity of the tomatoes and the sharpness of the chilies and garlic. I wish I had a hunk of focaccia or something like that to sop up all of that runny yolk, but this is a real winner. Yum. Now we're gonna take a look at a pheasant egg. The pheasant egg is about half the size of a chicken egg. They weigh about 30 grams, and their shells have this amazing olive color and this cool teardrop shape. Let's get one open. Wow, this is harder than I thought it would be. The shell is thick and the membrane is tough. It's a bit hard to get it open. Wow, look at that. The yolk is so yellow, and definitely the white is kind of on the looser side. The ratio is tilted somewhat in favor of the yolk. All right, let's fry one up. So it doesn't look all that different from a standard chicken egg, just smaller, although the white definitely ran more, so it has a bit of a lower profile. Cutting into it, the yolk feels pretty rich. Yeah, I'm getting kind of a wild vibe. Like this came from an animal foraging on insects and leaves and things like that. It definitely tastes kind of grassy, kind of undomesticated. Really tasty though. Let's try this one in a platter of huevos divorciados. This is a Mexican dish, a variation of huevos rancheros. The eggs are fried and then placed on top of tortillas and hit with 2 different sauces, one red, one green. I can't wait to try this one. Delicious. The pheasant eggs are creamy, and the earthy flavor they have really complements the corniness of the tortilla. And I love the way the acidic salsas cut the richness of the yolk. I think all the other flavors in this dish would kind of overpower a more subtle egg. I'm really enjoying this. Next on our lineup is a guinea hen egg. The guinea hen is a tough bird. While they are domesticated, they're a lot wilder and scrappier than your average backyard chicken, and they're much better suited to extreme climates. This shell is really pretty, brown with this kind of uniform speckling all over, and it's a little smaller than our pheasant egg. Let's get this one into the dish. Wow, this feels almost impossible to open. You know, guinea hens have a habit of hiding their eggs, so I guess that extra tough shell comes in handy. Definitely yolk heavy, kind of shiny, and the white is quite firm here. Haven't seen a lot of that today. Almost no runniness at all. It's similar to a chicken egg in that way. Excited to try this one cooked. Wow, this almost looks like one of those fried egg-shaped gummy candies. It's so perfect, it almost looks fake. The white is thick and mounded tightly, not runny like our other eggs. Big yolk energy here. I'm just gonna take this one whole. Super creamy. On the richer side, but definitely lighter than, say, our goose egg. This definitely has a little bit of a grassy, vegetal quality to it, but not so distinct that I'd be able to tell the difference between this and a chicken egg. Really fun though. Let's check this out in an enticing egg curry. Here we have a South Asian curry of potatoes, tomatoes, ginger, garlic, and a whole bunch of spices, and then we added our hard-boiled guinea hen eggs right at the end. It smells incredible, super aromatic. Let's get a little piece of egg here. Huge flavors here. I feel like the slightly smaller size of the guinea hen egg works well in this dish, but the flavors are so strong that they kind of overpower the more subtle qualities of the egg. The yolk is also a hair overcooked because the hard-boiled eggs cook again in the sauce, but on the whole, I really love this preparation. Time to move on from bird eggs and take a look at salmon roe. The word roe simply refers to the unfertilized eggs of fish and other marine animals. The main difference between bird eggs and fish eggs is that fish eggs don't have a shell. It's not as important for fish eggs to have a shell since they don't have to worry about staying hydrated. The other big difference is that fish eggs are smaller. Instead of laying one egg at a time, fish lay hundreds or even thousands because rather than having a mother hen to care for them, baby fish are typically left to fend for themselves, so they have a much lower survival rate. So here we have our beautiful salmon roe. Like most other edible fish eggs, these have been cured with salt as a way of both seasoning and preserving them. As you can see, these beads have an amazing orange-red color and contain a darker part that almost looks like a yolk. We're using a mother-of-pearl spoon here because certain metals can interact with the roe in a weird way that produces off flavors. I'm going to take a spoonful here. The eggs are so delicate. They just kind of burst at the slightest pressure, and this briny, fishy, umami-packed liquid oozes out. Yum. Ooh, it's so tasty. I just want another spoonful. And since salmon roe is so popular in Japan, we decided to make some sushi. This is just about as simple as it gets. A little nugget of seasoned sushi rice as a base, with a piece of dried, toasted seaweed, also known as nori, wrapped around it to form a vessel of sorts for a couple of spoonfuls of salmon roe, which is known as ikura in Japan. Down the hatch. That's a mouthful. The thing that's so beautiful about this is that the eggs have such a strong, salty flavor that pairing them with some mild, starchy rice makes a lot of sense. It really offsets all of that richness. And the nori adds a little bit of its own oceanic flavor. So delicious. You know, salmon roe is great, but when it comes to fish eggs, the undisputed champ is Osetra caviar. The word caviar refers to salt-cured roe from sturgeon very specifically. All caviar is roe, but only some roe is caviar. As with the salmon roe we tried, a very precise amount of salt has been added to this for taste and preservation. This is one of the fanciest, most sought-after caviars money can buy, and I'm lucky enough to get to taste some. As you can see, the individual eggs are much smaller than the salmon eggs and a lot darker in color, almost gray-green, super delicate. I'm gonna give it a taste. Super salty, but there's also a pronounced buttery, kind of nutty quality. God, that's good. Sometimes when people eat caviar, they just put some onto the back of their hand, which actually warms it up slightly to make it taste more. I could eat this whole tin. You know, and while we would never cook these, we can serve them up in style. Russian style, that is. Here we have some blini, which are little yeasted pancakes, topped with creme fraiche and a nice little plop of caviar. If I'm splurging on good caviar, this is the only way I want to eat it. Simple, elegant, delicious. Gonna pop one of these right here. Amazing. The tartness of the creme fraiche is so nice with the brininess of the caviar, and the graininess of the blini mellows out the intensity of the eggs while also playing up some of its nuttiness. It doesn't get that much better than this, folks. For our next egg, we're gonna stay under the sea, but get a little bit weirder with some lobster roe. There are plenty of egg-laying fish in the sea, but we wanted to compare that to the eggs from a non-fish marine creature. This black, slimy stuff here is lobster roe. It's pretty gross looking, I gotta be honest. A lot of times, people would discard this stuff when they're cleaning a lobster, but even though it's gnarly looking, it actually does taste good, I swear. Let's cook this up. So, the interesting thing about lobster roe is that it turns a bright red when you cook it, which is why it's also known as lobster coral. If you've ever opened up a steamed lobster and found red stuff inside, this is what it is. It smells great, very aromatic. Let's give it a little taste. It's really cool. Big oceanic flavor, and surprisingly not salty at all. It tastes really lobstery, like a concentrated lobster stock or something like that. And the texture is a little mealy, but normally you wouldn't eat it in this way. It would usually be incorporated into a sauce or something like that, which is exactly what we're going to do. Voila! So here we have some lobster tails that we've steamed, halved, and then what we've made is a little bit of a lobster butter out of the roe. We simply stirred some of that green blackish stuff into some hot drawn butter, and it immediately turned red and infused it with lobster flavor. Lobster loves butter. So tasty. It's actually pretty subtle, but the lobster roe really intensified the natural flavor of the lobster meat, really gilding the lily over here. And this feels like a really restaurant-y sort of preparation. Probably not the kind of thing I'd do at home, but a fancy and delicious garnish nonetheless. And last but not least, we're gonna check out some snail eggs. Our final egg is neither fish nor fowl. These are eggs from the petite gris land snail. The eggs are in between the size of our salmon roe and our sturgeon caviar, but they're bright white, like little pearls. They don't have a shell, but they do have a sturdy outer membrane which keeps them intact, and they're salt cured just like other caviar-style eggs. This is pricey stuff. It's difficult to harvest, and a single snail only lays around 4 grams of eggs per year. The Romans called these the pearls of Aphrodite because they considered them to be an aphrodisiac. Well, we'll see about that. Whoa, so crazy. The beads really roll around in your mouth. They're almost hard to pop, so much firmer than the fish roes we've tried, and the flavor is wild. Really mushroomy with a distinct earthy, wet moss, forest floor sort of flavor. Wow, I've truly never tasted anything like this in my life. Okay, now we're gonna try this out with some escargot. We're doubling down on the snail here with buttery cooked burgundy snails topped with some of our snail caviar. This smells incredible. Some herbs and garlic going on in there. I can't wait to try this one. Really cool. The eggs lend some really interesting textural contrast to that soft, tender snail meat. The delicate flavor of the eggs is getting lost a little bit here because of the escargot butter, which is so strong, but I'm definitely picking up some of that woodsy, earthy, mushroomy quality. Wow, what a treat. And there you have it, folks, 12 types of eggs. We tried all kinds of bird eggs, fish eggs, and even snail eggs, and each was distinctly different and delicious in its own way. Have a favorite type of egg you didn't see here today? Let us know in the comments.